What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Deep Dig of Sports Pod. I'm your host, Drew, with my other host over there.
What's up? It's D. We are back again. This is a YouTube exclusive because we had to hop on after the impressive performance by Brock Purdy. So this drummed up a couple of different things. I really wanted to touch base on the Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo situation brewing. We touched base a little bit on it this past week, but this has to be Jimmy Garoppolo's last game or last season with the 49ers, and Brock Purdy makes it so much easier, right?
Well, before we get into that, I just want to say go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe on this video for more content like this. And we want a couple of quick announcements. Next week, look out for our podcast. We are having John Jay as a guest from 49ers Ultimate Report. And if you're going to the Washington 49ers game, look for us pregame at Parking Lot Green 4, I believe.
I
Green
believe
Lot
so.
4, I think that's what it's called. And yeah, we're going to be interviewing fans. We're going to post a vlog afterwards, so hopefully you can be in it. But to answer your question, it looks like the fan base has I don't want to say completely turned on Jimmy, but has flipped the script onto Brock Purdy or Trey Lance. I think that's where the new 50-50 split is. It used to be like half of the fans fighting hard on Twitter every day for Trey Lance and half of the fans saying like, no, Jimmy's our guy, to now Brock Purdy's the guy and Trey Lance, who's it going to be between those two? And the writing's on the wall, man. Like, if Brock Purdy can do this better than Jimmy so far, then why are we going to pay Jimmy G all that money to come back?
Yeah, that's exactly my sentiment. I think, I even said it earlier this past week. It makes it extremely easy for them to say goodbye, Jimmy, because they don't have to pay Brock Purdy a crazy amount of money. They're not paying Trey Lance a crazy amount of money for a starting, quote unquote, starting quarterback. So it makes it so much easier for them to let Jimmy walk and get a third round comp pick in return. Have you been seeing this sentiment on Twitter where people are like, look at what Brock Purdy's doing? This exposes Jimmy G as a fraud. He was always a terrible quarterback. It was always the system. What are your thoughts on that?
Like I said, the 49ers Twitter, they can change on you real quick if you don't perform for them. And Jimmy G getting hurt was kind of the last straw of like someone's argument to say Jimmy should stay or should be the franchise quarterback going forward. He didn't play bad this year as much as I wanted him to fail because I love Trey Lance. Uh, no, I've turned from a Jimmy hater to a Jimmy lover, and he did what needed to be done. But I don't think it was ever Jimmy like bringing up everyone else. It definitely just felt like always the team bringing up Jimmy, and if everyone else wasn't on, then Jimmy wasn't going to be on. And with Brock Purdy so far, it feels the opposite. Like it feels like Brock Purdy's always on, and he's always bringing up everyone else around the team to do better. It's like what they argue about NBA superstars. Like, yeah, you can go get your 30, but are you gonna make the team better? And for Jimmy, it's more like, are you gonna go get your 10 and a couple assists a game, or are you gonna get no points and a bunch of turnovers and ruin this game for us? Um, but he wasn't that guy this year. He was actually someone who was going to be a great role player, and it's unfortunate he got hurt. But we see that Brock Purdy is not a role player. He's a leader. Uh, he's definitely like a veteran, scrappy guard out there. To stay in the basketball world, like he's someone you want on your squad, like leading the troops, even if he's not the most superstar guy.
Yeah, and I think too, I think it's a tired ass take, to be honest. Like, what if Brock Purdy is actually special? Like, it seems like he is. It seems like his experience, just his demeanor, his leadership intangibles, it all leads. It's trending to Brock Purdy being special. So for it to turn into like warped into, oh, like let's just use this excuse to shit on Jimmy. You could have shit on Jimmy for so many other reasons, but for Brock Purdy putting up this performance, I highly doubt it. And for like fans, Jimmy was never like a top 5 quarterback, but his range is somewhere between like a on any given day, he could be, number 25 or number 12 in the league. You know what I mean? Which is pretty solid. Like, that's a lot better than the majority of quarterbacks out there. The one knock on him was he's a guy that gets injured all the time. You just can't rely on him. And look what happened. Like, he got injured again. So there is criticism there, but to say he wasn't playing at a high clip this year, it's kind of bullshit, you know?
Yeah, he was getting wins. That's all that matters, and that's all he wanted to put on his resume, honestly. But now that Brock Purdy is winning, I don't know, like, do we really have to, like, I know 49ers Twitter is every day they're doing this, but do we really have to, like, compare and contrast each of these guys constantly? Like, we're here now. Like, I don't understand why the argument is Trey Lance should be the starter next year. Like, why are we even talking about next year? We're in a playoff run right now. Like,
Yeah.
let's win a Super Bowl this year, and we'll figure out next year, when it comes. But Trey Lance isn't coming back. Jimmy isn't coming back. Brock Purdy's the guy right now, and that doesn't say like I don't want Trey Lance in the future if he becomes like what he's expected to be. But if Purdy looks like this and Trey Lance doesn't, then we'll talk about that in the future.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of, not to, say, I know you're like, oh, why do we have to? But
But we're gonna
just
do
for
it.
to plant my flag into it, like, there's not going to be any more free rides. This offseason was a free ride for Trey Lance. He didn't have to do the whole QB battle this year. So it was basically handing him the QB1 spot. It was very similar to what they did with Zach Wilson. And now, like, we got our own Mike White here, a guy who's performing, who isn't on a really big deal, who we can try to build around. And it's a guy who's actually out there. And that's the difference. So there's like a difference between. So I work remote, right? I was a lot closer to my like team members when I actually worked in office rather than me working remote, because I don't really see them. I don't really see like what they're doing. It's the same thing with, the 49ers there. They see Trey Lance there and whatever he's doing, but Brock Purdy's going to be on the field. Brock Purdy's the one who they're going to be going through this playoff push with. So that's going to matter in their mind, just like it mattered with Jimmy G. They knew that they could count on him when, like, say what you want about Jimmy G. Jimmy G wasn't afraid of big moments. Jimmy G would step up. Even if he would make the wrong fucking play, he would actually step up and make the play and be like, okay, cool, next one up. So all that matters, and there's not going to be another, hey, Trey, you're QB1 unless he earns it. So, like, for people saying Trey is QB1, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Right now, it is Brock Purdy just because he's in there. Like, Trey's on the bench. That has to count for something.
Yeah, I think the argument of Trey lovers, Trey fans, is, well, he's only started 4 games. How can you say that he isn't anything when he's only started 4 games? My argument is he's only started 4 games, and it's been years since he's played like a full season of football. We knew coming in he was gonna be raw. We saw that he had some special moments, but he was raw. Um, Brock Purdy just is comfortable in this offense, and he makes the little plays. And what does Kyle Shanahan want? A guy that can make the simple plays. I mean, Brock Purdy's looking downfield, but he'll always find the check down. And Trey Lance is, in his limited time, he struggled with that a little bit. Just making the check down, just making the out route, just hitting the guys in the short to intermediate. He throws a beautiful deep ball. Not arguing that. He's fast. He can run. I'm not arguing that. Like, but he hasn't seen the field. And for people to spin that as a positive, I think is a little, out of line. Like,
Yeah.
I don't get like how it makes sense where you're like, well, he hasn't played. Like, okay, yeah, a lot of guys in the league haven't played. And if we're going to hold out hope for all these guys that they still might be good, maybe there's a reason they're not playing. So I don't know.
The one caveat that I will say that this could be good for Trey Lance is that Brock Purdy has stepped in, and I really thought this was going to happen with Christian McCaffrey, where Kyle was going to just, draw up all these plays and it was going to be like a super dynamic offense. And that didn't really happen until Brock Purdy got in there. Look at, they pulled a double fake screen and had Kittle wide open in the middle.
Where has this Kyle Shanahan been? Where has he been for the last 3 years? Like, what is going on?
So I think Brock Purdy stepping in with the confidence that he has allows, Kyle Shanahan to be really confident in opening up the playbook and making sure, like, hey, you know what? Let's just try it. Fuck it. Who cares? And I don't know if that's a plus for Trey Lance, because then maybe the stick that, Kyle has up his butt when he, like, coaches for Trey goes away in this offseason. He's like, hey, you know what? If I could do that with Brock Purdy, with, he has a weak arm, he's small, he's slow. I imagine what I could do with Trey Lance, who big arm, big guy, super fast, super mobile. Imagine what I could do there. Maybe it opens up the, this, like, oh, like I can play call freely. I can do whatever I really want now because I've seen it with this other guy. Or maybe it's like, hey, you know what? Actually, I'm really a lot more comfortable with Brock Purdy and his confidence in this offense. Let me just stay with him. So I don't know if it's a plus or a minus for Trey.
Well, the thing is, too, you like it's kind of on Kyle, like the Trey situation.
Yeah.
We've seen 3 different offenses this year with Kyle Shanahan, and it all depends on who he plays at quarterback and the amount he trusts that quarterback. Because with Trey, he didn't want to throw at all. With
No.
Jimmy, he slowly like started to gain that confidence in like Jimmy of, hey, we'll push it here and there. And with Brock Purdy, it's no holds bars. Like, we're throwing 40 time. Like, we'll do as much as we need on offense. We'll be explosive. And you don't want Trey to roll out there when he's not ready for that, because then we'll get the same Trey Kyle Shanahan offense that got Trey Lance hurt, because Kyle's not going to trust him to, open up the field. He's going to run him 10 to 15 times a game. And we don't want that, because Trey's just going to get hurt again. And then Brock Purdy's back in, and then it shifts that narrative back to Trey Lance. He doesn't play much. Brock Purdy's the guy.
I don't know. It's going to get complicated moving forward, especially this team is going to go deep in the playoffs. I already know it. Like, you can see that they're gaining confidence week by week. And the more that, Brock Purdy continues to put together performances like this, the bigger of a snowball effect it's going to have on the rest of the season and even moving into next year. So TBD on that. I'm just excited for the ride,
And I'll say this: we've always said, like, this offense to go to the next level, it does need like a playmaking quarterback. It does need a dynamic quarterback. But to you and to like anyone who's like, Trey Lance is the guy, no doubt. If Brock Purdy does win the Super Bowl, do we need to switch to Trey if like this is the formula that won us a Super Bowl?
I think that there's a couple of different things. Like, you let it play out. Like, you do have to go to a QB competition, and Trey has to win it by far. He has to actually look good in practice. And I know there's a couple of things that doesn't happen when Trey practices. It just, because he has to work through his mechanics, he has trouble making the throws, but he has those plays that are off script that you can count on. That doesn't translate in practice. You know what I mean? But what Brock Purdy does, it does translate into practice, where he knows, like, he's very accurate with his passes. He knows he's very confident with the offense and where the players go, to the point where he is a field general.
Yeah,
he's
like,
only picking up steam, dog. He's only picking up steam.
If there was a quarterback competition this season, Jimmy would have beat Trey.
Yeah.
That's fair to say. And next season, Brock Purdy arguably looked the best in training camp this offseason. So moving forward, I would say more than likely Trey, coming off injury, he's still really green, doesn't have a full grasp of the offense, no experience. He could potentially lose a quarterback battle to Brock Purdy. And Kyle doesn't give a shit that they traded for all these picks, that Trey Lance is number 3 pick. I think he's going to roll with his guy. That's just been his MO.
Yeah, I mean, look at what they've done at the running back position. They drafted 2 guys in the 3rd round. TDP hasn't even seen the field. I think he's seen the fullback position more than he's seen the running back position, which is pretty crazy. I don't even think is he on the active roster anymore? No, I don't think
I
so. I
don't
don't
think
think he
so.
is. So like, and they got rid of what's his face? He's on the Eagle. He was on the Eagles. Trey Sermon. Trey
Trey
Sermon. That's who it
Sermon,
is.
dang, he's so irrelevant now that we completely forgot him.
But yeah, like Kyle will go with whoever he feels comfortable with. It doesn't matter as far as your draft status. I mean, so we'll see. Like
Even
Trey
if
Lance
you're
would,
playing good, like look at Jordan Mason, that
yeah,
huge run he had, and Shanahan is still like, nah, you're gonna ride the bench, kid. Like you're not my guy.
you're not CMC, bud.
CMC is my guy. So you're gonna ride the bench. We're gonna run McCaffrey into the ground. We'll call you when Tevin Coleman gets hurt.
Yeah. So it's gonna be it's gonna be a weird dynamic if they do win the Super Bowl. I'm gonna be hyped for it. I'm gonna be pumped, but there is gonna have to be a QB competition because they cannot just turn around and then hand the job off to Trey Lance and be like, "You're QB1," even though we got a guy back here who, won us the big one.
Yeah, and they just asked the locker room to do that this last season when Jimmy led us to the NFC Championship, and then the front office and the coaches are telling, hey, we need to prop Trey up, like make sure that he's your guy in the locker room. And then you're gonna ask the locker room to do that again for Trey Lance when he hasn't done anything on the field.
It's going to be tough. It could be a situation. Again, I've said this before. It could be a situation of right guy, wrong team. You know what I mean? It's just like the way things happened. It's just very unusual. You do not have situations like this. It could just be maybe he is a guy, but it's just one of those things that the stars didn't align. Or he could come out just guns blazing this next offseason and be like a totally, different guy in
Which
the
I would be
offense
happy to
two
see that.
years.
I'd be
Oh
happy to
yeah,
see.
I'd be pumped. And Kyle Shanahan is like, hey, you know what? All this shit that I've been doing with Brock, I know that you can do more. Like let's ramp this up. Like I know how to call the game now for you. For a younger guy who's a little bit more mobile. Let's do this. So who's to
And
say?
and I'm just, you never know, like getting a later round quarterback. If you find a guy, like roll with the guy. Like don't question it just because of draft status. Look at right now, RG3 is commentating games, and Kirk Cousins just pulled off the biggest comeback in NFL history.
Yeah.
He was his backup. And
Yeah.
if they worried about draft status, he would, who knows what happened. So, just you got to go with like what you see on the field. And right now, Brock Purdy's that guy.
It's looking good.
All right. Well, that's it. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe this video. Go and watch some other videos up here around there somewhere. And yeah, we appreciate y'all.